I got the YouTube alert. We must be live.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to TechNow, the web series that is for you, the ServiceNow administrators and developers. I am Chuck Tomasi. We'll do our short intros now. We'll do our long intros in just a minute. Joining me around this virtual table is Craig.
Craig. Me? I'm like, who goes first? Hi, I'm Craig. And across from me is... Whoa.
Hi, I'm Dave Slusher, developer evangelist with the Platform Business Unit.
So it works so much better if we were in person. We just point.
Yeah. Maybe you just hold up signs.
We need some sort of messaging system. If only we had a platform.
Yeah.
Welcome to the show. This is episode 39. We are going to be talking about a whole lot of cool stuff that's actually been in the platform for a while. But before we get started, let me do the old screen ballet here. I will lock onto that screen. And I will screen share. You guys tell me if this is looking all right. I don't know if you have...
Oh, there you go. The mirror effect.
The tunnel of love.
There you go. Yeah, I can see your screen.
Okay. Let me adjust my mic boom here because I am rotated a bit. We are going to be talking about appointments and reminders. And special kudos to Michael Ritchie for showing me this on a recent customer visit. That this information has been around a really long time. But not used a whole lot. We do want to encourage you to join in the discussion. Go to the bit.ly link you see there, ServiceNow-TechNow, and that will take you to the big long list. Click on episode 39. You can join the discussion. We will be checking the comments there. If you are watching directly on YouTube, we'll be watching for comments there as well. They're just not as persistent. So add your comments if you want them to stick around a while. If you want to be accountable for them, put them in the community. My name is Chuck Tomasi. If you haven't watched one of our series or shows before, welcome. We thank you for joining us. We have a whole bunch of these. I mentioned this is number 39. They go back to early 2013 with Andrew Kincaid and myself. I have been doing this show for a number of years, been at ServiceNow for just over 7 years, since 2010, and a customer for a couple of years before that. I'm not going to go into all the gory details. You can see them there on the screen. Pause if you want to read them longer. We have a lot of content, and I don't want to belabor this introduction. I'm the guy with the bow tie.
Oh, now you're rhyming. So I'm Craig Stepp. I'm a senior curriculum developer, and I've been at ServiceNow, for 12 years. I'm just kidding. Since 2014. And before my coming over to the education services, I was in our professional services under orchestration, kind of heading up the orchestration part of the ITOM suite that we offer. And I've been a host of our co-host of TechNow since 2016. So, hey, wait, that means it's probably my anniversary.
Year and a half.
There you go.
It all together at the beginning. Yep.
Yeah. Now on to Dave.
And I'm Dave Slusher, developer evangelist with the Platform Business Unit, developer.servicenow.com. That's my obligatory plug. 20 years as a 20 years as a software developer. Mostly before I got here, it was mostly full stack, a lot of app server kind of stuff, Ruby on Railsy kind of things, and switched over to ServiceNow in 2013. Have never looked back. I've been developer evangelist. I guess at this point, where it's actually coming up on 2 years. We've had this slide for so long. The slide has about rotated the year. And Chuck and Craig and I as a configuration, wasn't it January 2016?
It
February? Was. So so a year and a half of this, and lots of nerdy goodness ever since. So thank you guys.
Yeah, both here and on Live Coding Happy Hour.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, I'm surprised your title isn't just developer.servicenow.com.
It could be.
Make it easier.
I want to remind you that there's, depending on when you're watching this, there are only a few short months left until Knowledge 18. It's going to creep up on all of us very, very quickly.
Yep.
It's in Las Vegas again this year at the Venetian. Looking forward to that. May 7th through 10th, there's pre-conference training, there's CreatorCon, there's the Knowledge Labs, there's networking, there's party, there's all kinds of stuff. We don't have the detailed agenda yet because The ideas are still coming in, and as we know them, we will post them and keep tabs on knowledge.servicenow.com. If you haven't been to a knowledge conference before, this is a great time to start planning your 2018 budget. And there are hints that are on that site that can help you convince your boss to do that. A lot of great value, regardless of whether you're CIO or help desk agent or somewhere in between. It's all goodness.
Yeah, and you're right there at the gondolas, so it's all good.
We have to get like a TechNow picture riding one of those things.
Yeah, riding by and waving.
Want to talk about our community quick tip? This is a segment that we put in the show. Oh, what about 6 months ago? I think it's been at least.
Yeah, at least. Yeah.
This time, I'm coming up on something that appears in the community with fair regularity. There's still some confusion around here, so I thought I'd throw this out as a quick explanation of what are display values, why would you see a SysID on a reference field, and what can you do to configure the way that those reference fields are displayed?
Now,
So-
I will tell you, it is confusing when you first see that happen, where you see an SSID pop up. I've had that happen. I'm like, early on when I was using ServiceNow, I'm like, what in the world is going on?
And hopefully this will help people like Craig.
There's always hope.
Underneath, the thing to remember is that a reference field, all it holds is a SysID, a 32-character hexadecimal string. That's all a reference is. It says, that's the record on that table that I want, whether it's sysuser and pointing to the Chuck Tomasi record, or it's the location record pointing to Santa Clara, California. That's all it's holding is a pointer, a reference, an address to another record. But that's not very readable by most humans. We don't want to read 3DA1257. It just starts to sound like that phone number for the emergency services on the IT crowd. Right? Nobody's going to
Right.
remember those things.
No.
Let's see. Did Craig end with 044D or was Craig D123? I can't remember.
Yeah. You should always remember your SysID for your user profile.
I remember the last four and the first four just to verify. Anyway, what we have is, you can see here, caller, assignment group, assigned to, they're all reference fields. They reference something. You can tell there's a little magnifying glass there. And we need some attribute, some field, some value to display in the referencing record, in this case, incident, to say, I'm going to reference a user record in the caller field. What would you like to show? The email address, the phone number, the employee ID? Take your pick. In this case, it's the name field. Same kind of thing with assignment group and assigned to. That's all it's for. So that's what the display value determines. And you get to choose what that table displays, but only once. Because once you set sysuser to display the name field, you can't say, for example, I want it to show the name on the incident, but I want it to show the email address on a request because that's handier. Well, no, it doesn't work quite that way. So you got to be consistent. Otherwise, it's going to be confusing for the user. It's going to be confusing for your fulfillers. It's just darn confusing. But there are some configuration things you can do. So first question is, how does a system know what to display in that caller field, for example? Well, you look on a table definition, there's usually a field, not always, I'll show you the exceptions, usually a field where one of them is marked with the display field set to true. You can either drill into the dictionary entry and check true, or you can do it from the table configurator in the list layout like this, check true, and that's what will become the display value. So in this case, I'm looking at, I believe, the incident table, and there is a number, and it might actually be task, can't tell from this screenshot, but there's a number field that says display is true. So when I reference the record in this table, it's going to show me the number field, not short description, not anything else. Questions, gentlemen?
Nope.
Okay.
What, oh, yeah, I do have a question. What happens if you have more than one of those values set to true?
Let's find out. That's coming up. That's coming up. I believe it's the next slide. But actually, no, it is this slide. If you don't have any columns set to true, you may see a SysID. Actually, you probably will, unless you have a field named number, U_number, name, or U_name. The system recognizes those as default display values, and I believe it's actually in that order. I could have the second and third one mixed up. But it will take, it says, oh, you've got a field called name? I'm good with that. I'll use that as a display value because you didn't tell me. And that's very nice for scoped applications because you can name your fields without the U underscore if you wish. In fact, I tend to prefer it. But this is what it does if you didn't specify one and you have one of these fields, it will use one of those fields. If you don't have anything called name, number, U under name, U under number, then you're going to get a sysID. If you try to set one as display equals true, let's say in that previous screenshot I had number is true, and I come back and say, nope, let's make short description true. It turns off the old one automatically. It says, you can't have two. That doesn't make sense. I'd be confused and that wouldn't make any sense. So I'm going to turn off the old one because you're now superseding it with whatever you're setting now. In this case, the error message says, you want to set state? Fine. I'm going to turn off short description. Good question, Dave. And we also have for tables that are extended, like incident is extended from task. Task has a default of number. We can set a different display value on incident if we so choose, because we can use dictionary overrides, a very powerful feature when you get into table extensions. SysUser doesn't have any extensions, so can't do that. But if I were to make a new application, like my Meetup application that we showed at CreatorCon, that was extended from task. I'm going to show the short description as the meeting description, and that makes more sense than a meetup number. Can you imagine going to meetup.com and seeing some sort of, this is meetup number 14532? It's like, so what? I want to know it's the Phoenix developer ServiceNow meetup.
You should remember the sysID for your meetup also.
It's in the URL.
That's true. That's right.
So just to the frequently asked questions that I usually see in the community and have answered a number of times, can I have more than one display value on a table? No. It's one and only one. Multiples would be confusing and inconsistent. And can I have a different one on the extended table? Yes. You can do that, as I said, with incident to task or meetup to task or whatever you wish. So that is my short and sweet about the display values and reference fields. I know it can seem a little bit confusing, but if you remember those basic rules, you'll be all set. Now, on to appointments and reminders. Again, join the discussion. Did we have any questions, by the way, gentlemen, in the community or on YouTube?
Just a statement that we look younger than we have a right to. And the question is, does ServiceNow keep us young? I believe the answer to that is yes.
Well, stress makes you old, so I'd say yes. We're doing pretty good. It's a low stress job for me anyway, most days.
Right.
Okay. Again, special thanks to Michael Ritchie for pointing this out to me. He was just randomly one day going through the related lists on, I think it was Incident. You right click, configure related lists, and wow, there's a lot of lists in there. I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but I think there's somewhere up above 30 related lists you can add. And it's crazy when you think of the common ones we usually do: task SLA, affected CIs. Well, there's a couple in there. Approvers is another common one. There's one called appointments and one called reminders. And he started exploring and said, what can we do with this? And he discovered this technology has been around since about 2006, but not widely used. And it can apply to enhance the experience of a lot of applications if you choose to use it. So I'm giving this to you as an FYI, and think about where you might apply this or enhance some existing applications or apply to new applications going forward. So what I want you to do is understand just how these tables work, where they are, what they're called, familiar with the configuration options, and we're also going to show an inbound email action to process responses, because if I send out an appointment, I'd like to know who responds, much like Outlook does when you use an Exchange server and you're setting up a meeting. So in the interest of our memes, I thought I'd throw that one up there. We'll talk about appointments. There's a notification template that goes on in there. There's a little bit of date format fiddling that we're going to do. Then we'll do the same thing with reminders, very similar, but a few gotchas we need to note on that table. And then I'll talk about the inbound action. That I'm not going to go through this thing line by line, but an example of how we could process an inbound action to capture and report on those meeting invites, those appointments that we sent out. So the use case for the appointments, there's several of them. Anytime you have a task that needs something that's coming up based on date. It could be, hey, this change request is assigned to you. I want to put it on your calendar. Or there's a facilities outage here's what I'm going to, let's block it on your calendar, because we all respond to those little alerts that say, hey, you got a meeting coming up in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes. That's very important. It's an active reminder, as opposed to, it's Friday night. Did we have a push to production tonight? I can't remember. But if you put it on people's calendars and their mobile devices are starting to bleep at 6:30, you got a better chance of people showing up for the production change.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you're talking about those notifications,
Yes.
will these notify you on, say, if you're using the ServiceNow mobile app?
It's going into your calendar. So
Okay, just the calendar stuff.
It's not part of the ServiceNow app, so it's not going to do push notifications. You don't have to configure that. We'll show you that in just a sec. It's sending you an appointment via email.
Right,
so
right.
Outlook or Apple Calendar or whatever it is that you use for your calendar management, that's what's going to be triggered for the alert.
Right. I just didn't know if you would also, if for some reason you had the if you had the ServiceNow app on your phone, if it would also notify you. Maybe you didn't have the calendar.
No, you don't need the native mobile app, and that wouldn't have any effect on this use case anyway. Like I said, it's been around since 2006.
All right. Yeah. No, I got you. All right. Cool.
The mobile app's been around for what, about 2 years?
Or less, maybe. Yeah, something like that.
The data flow is going to look something like this. We're going to start with the appointment record, and we'll put out an appointment that says tomorrow at 1 p.m. Here's an appointment. That's going to make use of the email template. We've all seen these. If you've done notifications before, you're familiar with email templates and how they can become the body and or subject of your outbound message, your notification. That's going to also consume a field map, which has related field. Did I not change that? Field map entries. It says field entry. That's what it is. It's a related list of this field to that field. We need to transpose or transform some date entries from ServiceNow format into the format that the template likes, because you don't know where this thing's going. There's sort of this universal embedded, I don't know if it's part of RFC 822. I think that's the email header protocol or format. But the body of these appointments, these vCalendar invites, also has a special format. So you begin, and I'm not going to do this entirely from PowerPoint, but a lot of the content is pretty static. I'll show you on a demo site. You begin by adding the related list, appointment to task. Be careful if you have customer service management installed. There's another related list called appointment to task. If you're in doubt, add them both and take the other one off that you don't need or want. That's the only way I could figure out which one was right from this list, because they were both labeled the same thing, and it was sad.
That is sad.
I went, that's not the form that I was shown, so I took the other one off. Like, let's go do that in Firefox. I've got my safety app, which is a scoped app extended from task, and I have no related lists. So as easy as configure related lists. I do not have customer service management, customer CSM installed. I need to go to my safety app so I can edit this. And here is appointment to task. Ta-da! Ooh, that was the hard part. And I have appointments. And if I click into this record, it's pretty straightforward. What is the subject? Meeting tomorrow. Well, meeting here. TechNow staff meeting. Tomorrow wouldn't make much sense. We're going to have our staff meeting, let's say today at 2 p.m., which will be 1400. Keep me honest here, guys. Relying on your eyeballs. We'll go for an hour. Pretty standard, straightforward stuff. I want a reminder 15 minutes before. It's related to this task record. So if I want in the notification, I can dot walk and mine that information out. What is this about? What it's related to? Could be a change record. This is related to task. So I'm not going to be able to get the caller ID field off of the incident table by default, all that good stuff. Where am I going to do this? Pick a location. This is our standard location picker. And topics for today. What's our next show? And I submit that. That's pretty much standard form stuff. Now, what does it do with it on the back end? That's where the magic comes in. That's what we need to look at next. We add records. You can do that either manually, as I showed you, or you could do it via script if you want to do a glide record insert. Pretty basic stuff. Just fill her in. The add to calendar checkbox I thought was interesting because you don't necessarily need to send every appointment to the people. Really what that does is it says, if I check this, I'm sending email. It's going to trigger the notification. If you don't check it, you've got a record. You can still use it in your system, in your process, whatever it happens to be, but it won't trigger that notification. That's all that checkbox is for. Questions? Comments?
No, actually, okay. That makes sense.
We're still on the setup and easy part. Now we get in a little deeper. There is an email template, and you can find these very easily. Go to the one you wish to use. There's one already built in for change. I'll use that as an example in just a second. But if you look in there, either the message or the message text field will look something like this. It's got a begin vCalendar at the beginning and an end vCalendar at the end, and there's certain format in the middle. And the one thing that I noticed is that and Michael pointed this out to me, the prod ID defaults to that //servicenow.com blah 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 format. We haven't had the greatest luck with that. I don't know why, but if you change it to Microsoft Exchange Server 2007, works much better. I believe it was Apple Calendar had a problem with this, but change it to Exchange Server and everybody seems happy enough. So that's just who's sending me this. We can impersonate it. It's sort of like the HTTP user agent string. Like pretend I'm Firefox today.
Right.
or a mobile device.
I wonder why that namespace doesn't work. That doesn't make. I mean, those little namespaces have been confusing to me through the years anyway. So.
Yep. I don't know.
This is the same reason why every browser reported itself as being Netscape Navigator for many years, right?
That's right. Mozilla
5.0. Yep. The other thing I want you to note is throughout the rest of the message, we've got the typical dollar curly brace notation for your subject, your description, your from dates, your to dates, that kind of thing, the from user. Very easy to do, just like any other mail template in the message body text. You can use those. But there are some things in here that do not relate directly to the database fields. DT start and DT end are the ones that I want you to look at. Those are what we're going to use for transformation. We're going to turn those into a different format because this particular protocol, file format, whatever you want to call it, does not lend itself well to glide date formats of 4-digit year dash 2-digit month dash blah blah blah. It doesn't like that way. But anything else you want to use from the event, from the mail, from the record is available in here. Very easy to do. Pull one up, copy it, change these couple of fields, and away you go. Which brings us to the date transformation part. We need to transfer that from a glide date format into Zulu format. And this is where it got a little witchcraft voodoo on me. There is a table in the system called sysimpacts map, which is your import-export map. I'm sorry, the slide is incorrect. Don't go with the maps.list. It's map.list as you see in the graphic on the right. Or excuse me, left. Left. Yeah, left. Whew. I had to hold up my hands for
Who's
that.
left? My left or your left? I'm just kidding.
You go and open up one of those records, and it looks like, in fact, let's take a look at that. So I wanted to go to the template.
Yeah, it's worth noting that when we did the run through for this is the first time I'd ever heard of some of this stuff.
Me too.
I mean, it's deep in the bowels of the system. It's been there for a long time, but I have never had any occasion to touch any of this.
But once you know about it, it's like, hey, I may have a use for that.
Exactly. I absolutely have a use for it. I just didn't know about it.
So let's take a look at the change.calendar integration. And you see, when it comes to you fresh from the factory, I'll change this to global for a second. It has the ServiceNow.com namespace. I would change that. It has a DT start and a DT end for when is it going. The start date and the end date is really what those represent. I need to put those into the notification context, namespace, whatever, make those aware, globally aware. And that's done through sysimpacts map. That's not M. I. And here we have iCalendar.reminder and iCalendar iTill appointment. This is the one for our appointment. I can tell because it's on the table appointment, which is iTill_appointment. And I look, and it doesn't really have a whole lot up here. It's of type iCalendar. I don't know when or why I would send any of the others, but that's an interesting question for another time.
I saw Excel in there. That's interesting. Okay.
The important part is down here at the end. I am going to take the ends field from the iTill appointment record and transform that into the DT end variable or field. What are we calling it? We got to make up a name here, a pseudo field, available to the notification. So this is just a map entry of those records. Now, if I go in there, it says, here's my database field, ends. It gets that from the table. So I've got the other fields from that as well. And I am turning that into the Zulu format. Here's where Dave had a head scratcher. Where is this transformation happening? It's actually happening implicitly. If you give it a date time field, such as ends or starts or whatever, it will say, aha, a date time field. I'm going to crank that out and expose it as this external name, DT end, in the Zulu format. And if I remember right, Zulu format is 4-digit year, 2-digit month, 2-digit day, no dashes, no spaces, no slashes, and then a capital letter T, and then the time format in there. I'd have to double check that. Don't quote me. It's been a while since I looked at that.
And I think it ends with a Z, right?
I think so. Z for Zulu, and
I think that is the Zulu. It ends with a Z, which is for some reason.
It's functionally, you can think of it as the same as UTC. There's no time zone applied to it. That's up to the client, whether it's Outlook or Gmail or whomever, to apply that time zone to whatever emails and appointments and calendars you have at your disposal. So it's a good way to normalize all of the date formats. There is another type in here called var, which I will talk about when we get to reminders. So keep that in mind. But that's the point of the field map and the field map entry. Unfortunately, they labeled both of these field map.
Yeah, and it's where the implicit part was what I found, a little troublesome, just because you have to know this magic is happening. So I would like it a little bit better if there was a little bit more of a breadcrumb for somebody running across this, because as it is now, this is a bit of lore you're just going to have to know, is that the act of mapping it will convert the format, and there's no. I was looking for the place where you picked the format, and it just doesn't exist. It is, as Chuck said, is implicit.
I loved that term, a bit of the lore. So it is written in the ancient books of ServiceNow.
If you're not around the right campfire, you don't know this. So.
Oh, man. I love your analogies.
He said the word. I just pulled apart. The field map, as I mentioned, happens there. Field map entry, we talked about that. And now I want to get into the reminders. Very similar in terms of functionality. Add the related list, which I can do very quickly from my safety app. Got to switch my scope here, so I'm back on safety. And turn on the safety so I don't shoot myself. And open that up. Reminders are a little different, and they have quirks of their own, and I use that term delicately. Let's add the related list. Reminders. Reminders. Where is it? Reminder. There it is. Went right past it. This one doesn't have any confusion as far as I'm concerned. Again, we can add a record manually or by script. There's my task. Subject is going to be, don't forget the laptop. It's bring your laptop to work day. Okay, and we'll do that whenever.
Yeah, that's every day.
It's before one of these fields. Now, here's the interesting part. Let me save that record. Here's the interesting part. It goes, wait a minute. You asked for something on activity due, but you don't have anything in that field. So what's the point? It doesn't let you save this reminder because it will never go off. You have no value in that field. So I'm going to say, well, let's use the due date. That ought to work, right? Fortunately, this record does have a due date in it, and it will let me save that based on that value. Now, the other thing is I have more date time fields on my task record than 4. Here's the weird part. This before field has a very interesting data type to it. It's the type reminder field name. Whatever that is, and whatever functionality it has, it doesn't expose all the fields to you properly. So if you want to use another field, such as work_start, which now has the label actual start time, you can, as long as it has a value, here's actual start, aka work_start, you can, in script or manually from the list editor, change it. It will check those same values to make sure you have a populated field. Otherwise, I'd get the errors up there. However, if I went back into that record, I wouldn't be able to save it because it would only allow me to do those 4 fields. Kind of weird. Oh, by the way, Dave, you noted something about this. Did you check out the little heartbeat
Right.
on the
Yes.
new Jakarta feature?
Oh yeah.
Live list edits. It will, if Craig is on this same instance modifying records and I happen to have it on the list, I'm going to know about it. It's like the
Right.
forums
That's good.
were for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just letting you know that a value contained in the list in this tab has changed while you've been looking at it.
Yep.
Yeah, just like the forms, they do that.
Right.
Like the,
Yep,
I mean,
the
if I was to
little-
update I was to update the date while you were looking at that, it would show the little icon like that
Very
beside
cool.
the due date.
So had to stick in a Jakarta feature. We're discussing future topics, and we're more than likely August is going to be.
Hey, by the
laden
way,
with-
did you see this? Take it off
Yeah.
rails.
Yep, it's going to August will likely be a lot of Jakarta features. Let's keep going though, because there's that weirdness. What do you do about it? Well, I pointed it out that it's got some idiosyncrasies, that it only has 4 values because it's that interesting, I'll say, data type that's never been seen before and never had been since. But you can add them via script, as I mentioned, or the list edit to do that. Again, don't re-edit that form, or when you save it, it'll default back to one of these. In fact, you may not be able to save it because it'll say, hey, you asked for this, but it doesn't have a value, so I'm not going to allow you. And this makes sense. You do want some sanity checking. Why would you set a reminder for a field that has no value? That's the point.
And as you had noted, like at the very beginning, that this is apparently a pretty old, it's one of the original chunks of functionality, and we can kind of see that it's almost like I don't know what you call it, the evolutionary. It's like an evolutionary dead end in certain ends. You can see that certain parts of the platform have moved on, and this has kind of you can see some of the residual aspects of the past, in the fact that this has not changed a lot in recent releases. So we have maybe some things that have been factored out of the rest of the site that remain in this part.
Can almost see Fred Luddy in his shorts and flip-flops sitting in an office of about 8 people.
Right.
The rest of the reminders work just like the notification, the appointments. With the notifications, you got to have the template. You can use DT start and DT end. But I did want to, before I jump into that, you've got the sysimpex field map thing. Sysimpex, there it is. And I told you I would point out to the other type. So if I go into reminder, this is always fun because the out of the box example is actually broken. And it has this interesting attachment. It's just for curiosity, I had to open this. I don't know why it's in this demo data. It's really old. Let me blow that up for you so you can see it. Like, oh, here's a couple of incidents. Look, 5-digit incident numbers. We haven't seen those since 2009. Right? It just looks funny. Short description, keyboard stinks.
Keyboard stinks. I had a dime for every time I've used those words together.
Okay, so just It has no bearing on this at all other than entertainment value right there. But the same thing is true. You've got a map record, and the script that you write here has event under start and event under end. These should really be some sort of date time value, not a string. So realistically, I would go new glide date time. I have not tested these variables yet, so we're going to find out. Save that, and then those become the variable type in your field map. So down here, I've got remind me is a field from the reminder table called alarm time. I'm going to trust that the reminder table has a field called alarm time. But event start, which is mapped to a variable name that doesn't exist, should be event start as a variable. Now I can take the script variable. The type is script. Excuse me, if there's a script in there and I have a variable called event start, it will map that to DT start. That's what it's telling me. So I just wanted to square that away. Otherwise, it's pretty much grab the field from the database, but you can also grab a variable from the script. Kind of handy when you think about it in terms of flexibility. This is the part that has that circa 2008 feel before a lot of things went scriptless. And logically, this should also be event end, right? To align with that variable. That's what I wanted to point out there. So if you don't like the fact that you're only given 4 fields for that reminder type field, whatever it was, reminder start field, I did a quick hack workaround. I put a new date time field on the form, said, great, call it date time field. Worst field name ever. Then set some attributes in the dictionary. Table equals task. So go look at the task table or whatever your favorite table is, and set types to glide date time. That way, when you choose your fields, it doesn't show you active. It doesn't show you short description. It's just the ones that are glide date time. And then make a before business rule that sets the real before field, which is called field. That's the worst field name ever. The label is before, the field is called field. Like naming your dog.
You know what? I'm surprised that's not some kind of, protected word.
Reserve. Yeah. See the last
Field.
episode before the last one about getting events. That's a fun one.
Field.
So, couple of notes about this. The reminder map entries, as I said, are incorrect out of the box. The event date, the reminder start date, that kind of stuff. Other instances we've noticed do not necessarily have the sys impacts map entries for the reminder and appointments table. Right or wrong, I've exported them to XML, put them into a zip file attached to the episode 39 on the community. You can pick them up there if you want. You go, hey, I don't have one of those. Or you can generate your own correctly based on what we said here. Totally up to you. If you want a starting point, download the XML, load it up. It's 2 files, one for the map entry and one for the map. So you've got the related list. You got to do those 2 imports. Very easy to do. If you haven't done an XML import, maybe that's a quick tip we can do on the next episode. Finally, just checking the time. We're doing great. Finally, I send out appointments. I want to know who's planning to come to the Friday night push to production change meeting. I've got a change.
Me, I am.
Is there beer?
Yeah, that's right.
I need to process those responses, much like an approval. You send out an approval, it has a couple links in there. There are mail to links, so you can click it and say, I approve or I reject, and then an inbound email action processes that response and updates the record accordingly. We're taking that same approach. In this case, we had our solution consultants at ServiceNow that were responding to various records where they needed to be reminded or they were invited to this thing. And we were keeping track in ServiceNow who's coming and who's not. So it's a clever alternative to doing all of this through email appointments and setting up a separate calendar and. Let's keep this on our beautiful single source of information in the ServiceNow database. So here's our use case. The SC activity request goes out and sends these appointments and makes this related list you see at the bottom called SC activity request users. It says David Wilson was sent, but he hasn't responded yet. Jürgen Bittman has declined. The status, I don't know what they were doing with this process, but I'm really interested in, here's my user, here's my response. This is a separate table. It's not part of the native out-of-the-box system. This was built for this exercise. The inbound action that processes this, again, I'm not going through this line by line. So first we make sure that the table name is the right table name so that we parse it. We drop into the parse email response function. The important part is let's get the subject and get the response. What was the user response? Are they coming to this meeting or not? Have they accepted or declined? That's really all we want to know on that third line. We drop into the get response function. It cleans things up and says what, much like the approval says, is there an approved in this subject line? Is there a declined? Because when you respond from your mail client, it's sending back a mail response. That's all it's doing. And different mail clients respond in different ways. So we're abstracting this one level further into get response meaning. So first we're slicing out that piece of the subject to say, what does it say? Now let's go interpret what it says and then take the meaning and normalize it with answer equals accepted or answer equals declined. And this is what the get response meaning looks like. Different clients, different responses. It could say declined, rejected, tentative, who knows? So we're going to clean that up, send that back to the get response. Get response will then say they're going or not, and we can save that to our record. Now, also, just right after we called get response, there was which record are we going to be updating? What's the parent record that's relying on this? And then we can go find out which child record. That's all this is saying. It's the background. Who are we updating? What is current? What is the parent? That kind of thing. And this function is on the next slide. That's why I put the arrow there so I wouldn't forget. That just goes into the subject again, much like you see the incident on the subject line of an approval. That's what we're doing. We're getting the solution consultant activity record and updating that accordingly. Are they going or are they not? So didn't want to go through that in gory detail, but that's an example if you wanted to use that as some of the code to build your own inbound action to process that response. If you're having an appointment, you may want to know who's coming to that appointment or not, or you can just trust them. They'll all be there, right? If we sent a reminder, that'll work.
Yeah.
So, quick summary on this one as we wind this down, and you guys can help check for comments and whatnot on the community and YouTube. The functionality, as I mentioned, has been around for quite some time. It's available out of the box for appointments and reminders on any task table, task being the key word. You can use this in a scoped environment, as you saw me doing here with the safety application. That was a scoped app, so it doesn't really matter about that part. Make sure you update those email templates to the right values, the prod ID, double check your DT start, DT end, and have the import export map that correspond to those. And if you wish to process those inbound actions, you can do that based on the example here. I will post that code to the episode 39 community, so you can just scrape it there or download a text file or a JS file if you don't want to type it. You will need to modify it for your tables and fields and whatnot if you wish to do that. So I'll make that available to you. As always, you can find out a lot more information on our wiki, doc site, developer site for any of the APIs that we've got in here. There is another community thread that I thought worth noting that Mr. Michael Ritchie was kind enough to link to. If you're digging through some of the script includes that have to do with the that state transformation and the mapping and all that stuff, there is an undocumented API, an undocumented class called Glide Listener, and you can find out more at the thread that's shown there if you really want to go digging deep. I wasn't able to decipher a whole lot of it. Wish it was documented like I do a lot of our undocumented APIs, but there you have it. It's just a reference for the nerdy. Do we have any feedback from the people? Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna ask before you take away or go away, if we had some questions. If we had, I don't know. I'm not
we have some questions. We actually have some questions all the way back to the community quick tip. So, okay. I just wanted to, one of the things that since we've been talking about this topic is, as you guys know, I've been working on my application that is very much kind of notification heavy and time and
Yes.
duration driven. And I really have been wondering whether I should be integrating with this. And I haven't really come to a conclusion yet, but I mean, certainly there are aspects of the system that, that I knew that I was reinventing a wheel, and I thought maybe there should be more that I'm leveraging that already exists there. And I'm going to rethink some of my design decisions based on this information. Like, should I be using the reminder infrastructure in places where I'm currently not? So this was extremely timely information for me.
Oh, good. And that's kind of why we wanted to do it. Is I didn't know it was there. I don't know that I have any use cases that I can retroactively go back and do the same thing you're doing with your travel tracker and saying, do we need to enhance or switch things? What were your thoughts? I'm just curious, as we're completely off script at this point, Dave. What were your thoughts on alternatives? What would you use to do reminders and appointments as opposed to this?
Well, I'm doing a real time. So I'm not doing any timed based. Like right now, every notification that I have is driven by the flight status webhook. So basically, an event happens out there. But there may be a reason why I want to have like your standard your flight is in 8 hours type email.
Yeah.
And I could add that in there, and this would be an easier way to do that, where I could have that coincide. I could have that basically living beside my webhooks, where an event out in the world triggers a notification of some kind, like your flight has changed. And then I've also got by the way, don't forget to check into your flight in 24 hours. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I could I'm thinking about, can I kind of rationally have all these things coinciding? And also, I have a schedule type that I'm using, and I did not extend any of the existing types because I kind of found them a little like the ITIL schedule stuff was it had too much baggage for my particular case. But actually the appointment might be more sensible. I might in retrospect have preferred to have extended that table. So I might actually go back and rethink that decision.
All right, I'm turning the screen share back off. We're back on camera. So Craig, we need your camera back on for
all right. And so the questions that we had back at the beginning, Raul asks, can you explain a little about the reference qualifier?
Oh, sure. A reference qualifier is effectively a filter that you put on a reference field. So let's say I've got a list of users. When I click that magnifying glass, I see all the users. I can turn on a reference qualifier to say, for this particular reference field, I only want to see the active users. So I can put a reference qualifier on that reference field that says active is true. Now, any record that doesn't match that criteria is filtered out. It's a qualifier to the records that reference field is retrieving. Hence the name reference qualifier.
Or you could do something like, say your field, you're picking like a customer service rep, right? So your reference qualifier is now someone in this group, or something like that.
Yes,
or
you can make them as simple or as complex as you like. There's 3 different methods you can use for the reference qualifier. There's simple, which uses the condition builder. Active is true is a good example of that. There's dynamic, if you want, kind of like you do the dynamic filters on a list where caller is me, or is dynamic me. Or you can do an advanced reference qualifier, which is how I was introduced to them and seemed the only way in the old days, was to use a script include that formulates an encoded query string that then feeds to that reference field.
Right.
Says, well, I only want to see the CIs that are in this location, that are in service, that are this type, and you can make this thing as nasty, as complex as you want, based on form data, based on the current time of day, based on anything you've got your access to on the system, their server side, so that you can filter out the information that's displayed in that list. So rather than 16,000 CIs or more in many organizations, you just see the 6 that are pertinent to this record and how it's set up right now.
Yeah, I've done that lots of times, just using a script include. And of course, when you can pass things like current into that script include, and then you can say, if you check the box that says only, I'm just saying, Yeah, but active users checkbox, and you want the users to only show, just like you said, true or not. Your script can look at current and see if that checkbox is on and do the filter, all kinds of stuff.
Right.
Anything else, Dave?
Yes. Chad asks, how do you get rid of that info preview with an attribute? So I guess I think he's talking about the little flyover window when you're hovering over.
Oh, okay. I just refer to that as the eye icon next to the reference field.
Oh,
Right, when it pops up the little summary, like the floating summary window.
Yeah.
There's
is
probably
there
a
a way
system
to-
property for that, because I know I had to enable a system property to enable the look ahead or the previews when a field is set as
Read only.
read only. There's
Yeah.
a system property for that, so I'm sure there's another one for what you're just talking about.
It just says
it's
never
the
show
same,
the preview.
it's the same property, but the thing to note is it's system wide. And I believe, don't quote me on this, but I remember seeing in the community recently, there is an attribute you can put on the field to determine whether the read-only fields have that or not on a field-by-field basis rather than the whole system is either. But it is read-only. You can't take it away for editable fields. You don't want to take it away for editable fields.
No.
Right, so Chad, basically you're making you can do it, but you're making a system-wide decision. So
Yes. Well, it used to be system-wide, but I think more recently,
you're
I don't
saying-
remember that, there's a dictionary attribute for the field that you can put on that dictates whether or not.
Okay.
Yep. I will double check and I'll put that into the community post as well. Good question.
All right, let me bop over to the community one last look to see if anybody has a question there. And I don't see any, so I think we are good on that.
Good discussion. Wow, our quick tip turned out more questions than this content that no one's ever heard of before.
Right.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm trying to I don't want to I don't want to sell this short because like the appointments and reminders, I mean, as I say, is a thing I'm exploring to see can I incorporate it. But it is interesting that it's clearly the book in the bookstore with a layer of dust on it.
Yes.
And it may have a lot of value, but it has not been picked up in a long time. And it has not seen a lot of love.
And that's why I wanted to expose it here. There may be some nugget of information. Who knows? You could release the dragons. We don't know. So thank you very much, gentlemen. It's been a big help. A lot of fun as always.
All right. Thank you guys. Always a pleasure.
We're going to sign off, and we will talk to you again in August with an unknown tip, an unknown topic.
We'll leave them wanting something, Chuck.
But we're going to discuss that right as soon as we sign off. Until next time, thank you very much, and take care.
See you, everybody.